One of the meanings of the word finance is to supply with means of payment. This is the meaning that it should have for everyone in this time of restructuring consciousness. It is actually a very simple statement, to supply with means of payment. It does not state the word money, if you will, just means of payment. This is the one guideline that everyone should focus on. It will become imperative to focus on this description in the near future. If not money, then what should we be amassing for our protection against the hard times that we must go through? Barter is the answer. Look up the meaning of the word barter. To trade by exchange of commodities rather than by the use of money. There is one more word that we wish you to look up. That word is fair, free from bias, dishonesty, or injustice. What these three definitions are combined, you have a description of finance for the new consciousness. To supply yourselves with means of payment by the exchange of commodities in a manner that is free from bias, dishonesty, or injustice. Impartial exchange of goods would be a shorter definition. This is not a new idea. As a matter of fact, it's one of the oldest systems in the world. That is because it was brought to our world from other worlds. It is the true spiritual manner of sustenance. When this manner is followed, naught can go wrong with the system because it is a self-adjusting system. This is the only way of combating the control the government bureaucracy has over the people. This thought has been picked up by many people on the earth plane, especially just recently, and many have tried to institute its use. Most of them have failed. Why? Because they tried to make money off of a spiritual concept. This will always fail, as it is being done for selfish motives. The garage sales people are holding are becoming a source of disappointment for most. Why not switch to barter? Why not hold a garage barter instead of a garage sale? There are many ways this concept can be initiated in the years ahead. Many of these ways will be ingenious if people will only open their minds to the fact that they don't need to have money. They do need to have their own two hands and their reasoning, intelligent mind. These ideas on finance for the new consciousness is not going to make some happy. They would like to be told an easy way to amass huge sums of money to acquire possessions. We're sorry to disappoint them. We have spoken before that the way of earning a living in the future would be by what comes forth from the center of a man's being. To have a humane way of life, it must start as everything starts, in your mind with the attitudes. Quality applies to your esoteric life. Everything you possess, everything you eat, everything you do, all your activities must have a special meaning to the inner part of you. If they do not, perhaps you should not possess it or eat it or engage in that activity. It's as simple as that. This would be the starting point, then, for a humane life. So to achieve a humane state and quality of life, it truly must start with the education of children, as they must be able to contact their inner being, their soul, and hold that contact steady, to hold the desire for the quality of life steady, which then will hold the activities in the exoteric journey steady. It has a snowball effect, but it must start as a small child then, because humanity, coming from this point, growing up, living in our cities, providing their families with sustenance, would know and place more value on truly every bite of food that goes into his body. There would be less of this food, but it would be of higher quality, higher energy. It would be partaken of slowly and sensuously enjoyed, every morsel, as this would satisfy the esoteric part of your being. This is what you should do instead of grabbing a bag of snack food and putting it down handful by handful, almost as fast as your hands can do it. That eases the nervousness in your physical animal body, and it eases the animal brain. Aha, I have food. I'm not going to starve, because this is a carryover from the animal kingdom from which we came. There is always that fear in animals of where the next bite is coming from, where their next meal is coming from. There will be no more forms of pasta. They clog up the human system and promote excess weight. Many new forms of vegetables will be grown due to progress in hybrids. Fruit will be a most necessary form of food. Only whole grain breads will be used, nothing using white flour, white sugar, or white salt. There will be new spices and herbs that will enrich all forms of cooking. The only alcoholic beverages will be fermented fruit juices, such as wines and ciders. These will be found to be beneficial in moderate amounts. Much of our food supply will come from the sea. There will be sea stations, some of which will be experimental farms. Others will be harvest stations with many varieties of fish being harvested. A lot of vegetation will be deliberately planted and grown to be used for food. The biggest supply of food will be in the form of lagoons. Plants that evolve and grow in the same area where a certain race of people evolve and grow will naturally be more compatible, not only as a food, but also as healing agents for those bodies. This is why the diet of the pregnant female is so very important. The food, plants, etc., that she eats have developed as a combination of minerals and soil, and these minerals and soil actually make up the bodies of the babies. In other words, the digestive system of the female changes in pregnancy, similar to changes in a production line in an automobile factory to produce a new car. Her food production factory changes to produce a new form. The digestive system utilizes the original minerals and soil processed out of the plants, the vegetable and so on, that she eats, and uses this material to form the baby's body. This is where the meaning of dust to dust in the funeral service came into being. Human bodies are truly formed from soil. In the future, food production will be a large and important field for people to work in. Many new forms of vegetables will be grown due to progress in hybrids, only they will be grown inside buildings with colored lights and music where weather conditions will not affect them. The food will no longer need to have processing because the products will be growing all year around. The fruits and vegetables, that is. Whole grains will be the only source of flour. There will be no additives or preservatives allowed in anything. The quality of our drinking water is of great concern. This must be the beginning of health care for all, because water is vitally important in the makeup of the human body. The flesh is made up of 80% water, after all. When the makeup of something has that high of a percentage of one particular item, then that item must be the most important part to be started on. The rest of the body is 15% vegetable and 5% mineral composition. When this gets out of balance, this is when disease begins. The merging of man and machine is a concept that will change our society into that of the age of creativity, as each will be bringing their creation from the center of his being as the expression of his offering to his family on the earth plane. He must create his own method or way to present his offering. This is what will be the merging, the man and his creation merging with his vessel or vehicle of expression. This term is the synthesization of his lower self and his higher self into an avenue of bringing forth his creativity in his own manner. It is not that of taking his ideas and stepping them down into something a machine can produce, but that of stepping them up so that technology must ever reach upward and forward to make the ultimate use of the idea. As an example, if a man or woman is convinced that they have an idea that would be better material for our clothing to be made of, they would produce by hand, painstakingly, a sample of this material. Say there is an ingredient in this material that comes from the animal kingdom in a different way than now employed, and cannot be woven through the cloth with present-day machinery, because it would be destroyed. This ingredient is the one ingredient that makes this material more beneficial for mankind. Instead of changing the makeup of the material by eliminating this ingredient and going back to the old ingredients so the material could be woven on present-day looms, this person has the determination to, instead, either change existing machinery or invent a totally new process for incorporating this ingredient into the material. This new process may not even involve machinery. It may reach back to the diet of the animal, or even back further to the mineral kingdom, to incorporate the ingredient necessary into the food chain, which would then change the animal's diet, which would then produce wool, for instance, that has been impregnated with potassium, that will enter the system of one who wears it and keep his level of potassium at exactly the right place, because the skin will only absorb what it needs to have and no more. An instrument of the future will be the Selodian. It will have a round keyboard. It is based also on round energy waves vibrating in a continuous enclosure. In other words, the cabinet is round. The keyboard, of necessity, could only be a half circle, but it is the chamber where the strings are located that should be round. It will be basically the same principle employed now, and would have a beauty of tone that could not be equaled. Incidentally, a round guitar would produce a gorgeous sound. The round shape would also serve well all other stringed instruments because of not bending the energy waves. These instruments could be hand-produced. All instruments should be made of wood and kept in a greenhouse atmosphere. A greenhouse turned into a studio would be excellent. The plants would give the atmosphere needed to hold the tones and yet not bounce them. At the same time, the vibrations of the music would increase plant growth and health and beauty. The combination couldn't be beaten. Each would enhance the other, and the health of the students studying there would be improved automatically, mentally and physically. And you would find them learning faster and being much more eager to take their lessons. At the same time, colored lights could be introduced to benefit plants and humans and effectively control the atmosphere as to heating or cooling. This would be a sensational new concept of music greenery. It would be found that the stringed instruments kept in the studio would stay in perfect pitch, and the wood of the cabinets would become tempered just right to produce the most beautiful tones. There is so much that could be done with music. Musical vibrations could be used in the growing of fruit, miniature fruit trees, and shrubs. These could be perhaps incorporated into the greenhouse music studio because they would be perfect for a climatic atmosphere and would respond to musical vibrations. In fact, this is the secret to producing much fruit on very small trees and bushes. Don't forget, the shape of the greenhouse must be round. I would like to tell about my vision of a city in the future. As I approached the city, one of the first observations I made was that everything seemed to be pinkish golden. There was not much difference in day and night due to the artificial atmosphere. Also, everything seemed to be under cover. There were lights on inside some of the homes, and yet out away from overhead protection, the sun was shining in the park. The parks had large fountains and pavilions of colored panels with the sun shining through like stained glass, allowing one to bask under whatever color he chose. There were bright-colored birds in the park, tame birds like pets. The schoolroom I visited had tiny open aqueducts to water the plants and put moisture in the rooms. The next thing to strike me was how clean everything was. The houses were dome-like structures made out of a white substance that looked similar to concrete but wasn't. The homes could be added to with other domes as needed or desired. One dome was a swimming pool, another a health room, and so on. The walls in the health room had variegated tubes of colored lights around them. The swimming pool rooms in the homes were filled with golden light and much greenery. The bathrooms were filled with mist and greenery. The streets were made of the same substance as the dome houses. They were lined with plants and trees. There were tiny open aqueducts above the sidewalks carrying water to the trees and plants, and also putting moisture into the air. There were even dog toilets placed along the streets, and dogs were trained to use them. The street lights were glowing poles. The department store I saw had a large domed ceiling filled with greenery. There was a greenish cast inside all the buildings due to plants. In the department store, one could sit and view the merchandise passing by on a big screen. If you saw an item of clothing you liked, you would be shown how you would look in it. There was an airfield with individual airships, something going round on a pole, winding them up like rubber bands for a power source. These were used for short trips. I was served a meal in a restaurant consisting of meat that was a cross between chicken and rabbit. Plums and pears that were crossbred were sliced on the plate with the meat. There were potatoes that had been crossed with beets. They had red centers when sliced. There was also a salad with large leaves that I understood was grown underwater. There was a seaweed dish similar to spinach, and the bread was dark, rough, and delicious. Bathroom waste went into large underground vats and was converted into gas for neon lights that were used in growing plants and also to light the homes. The indoor orchards were in all stages of growth at the same time in different areas. The ceilings in the fruit and vegetable barns were panels able to be any color of light depending on the different fruit and their different stages of growth. The attendant could tell if a tree or plant was not doing well by feeling the vibrations upon entering the room. There were open cars that would hold 2 persons. These cars could be folded flat and stored in racks like bike racks and were plugged into a power source while people shopped. Huge musical motors supplied energy to run all systems. One could sense harmony in the vibrations if all was well and could pick out the one motor that wasn't functioning right. These vibrations would sound a harmonic chord internally in one's body, if all was well. The setup of our world now has served very nicely for the learning of many lessons for all those who have had incarnations for the past 2,000 years. But these methods will no longer serve to set up the advanced lessons that people need to have as they evolve. The structure of our society needs to evolve right along with them, and it is not doing so. What served even 50 years ago is no longer a viable tool for the learning of lessons for those in incarnation at the present time. Change is the key word of a living, breathing, pulsating, progressive society, and it is this very change that humanity fights so much of the time. Our future will be likened to the opening of the door to a bright, clean new house and furnishing and equipping that new house with the best possible furnishings and equipment. This future will be based on the age of creativity. Each one of us will learn to express our inner self and our feelings in an outward way. This will be achieved with the expression of the soul taking place through the arts. This will be started in wee babes and carried through each lifetime. Everyone will have the same spiritual concepts. The kingdom of God being within each one, and the dignity of man will be the most important facts for all to live by. Universal law will be the supreme law for all countries.